Thank you. Do you mind if I start with a show of hands? Actually, I just want to see how many people have actually heard of Lottie Dolls before I started. Oh gosh, I'm preaching to the converted here. Yeah, so I guess the question I get asked most is, how did a guy end up having a doll company? So I'll give you a little bit of background on how it started. I studied accountancy, so I finished college, studied accountancy. It was never something I really believed in, but it gave me a really good insight into business. Because I wasn't passionate about it, and I want to say this to kids as well, sometimes when you're on a path, it may not be the path for you, and don't worry about that. I was persistent. I got my qualification. It did take me about 10 years to get there, which was a source of fun for a lot of my friends, but I went off traveling. I spent a year in Australia, and I ended up in London. I spent 15 years there. I got engaged, and I was with a girl from Italy for 5 years, and we had a really happy life. We had a lovely home in London, and when I was there, one of the guys that I met when I was in Australia, he asked me to help him do some business plans for a novelty gift company that he had developed. So I was helping him in the evenings, and eventually we raised some money, and the investors asked that I join them in business. And we built that business up over 5 years with offices in Hong Kong and New York and London. And sadly, at that time, my fiance, she developed skin cancer, and after about 5 years, she sadly passed away. When things like that happen to you, like real challenges in your life, you take the opportunity to look at everything that you're doing. You appreciate every single moment that you have, family, friends, the people that matter to you. And at that point in time, I decided that I'd sell up my shares in that previous business. And I partnered up with a girl called Lucy, and we knew from speaking with friends that there was a gap in the market for a wholesome doll. Anecdotally speaking to friends in London, and even from my own situation of buying for my nieces, there's a few of them out there somewhere today, but I never felt comfortable buying any of the products that were on the market without really understanding why. So we started to do some research into what that word wholesome meant to people. So we, one of the first people we came across, Lucy came across a lady called Dr. Margaret Ashwell, and she had done this research where she put 15 kids into one room, and they played with the fashion dolls that are on the market, and another group that were playing with different toys. And she found that the ones that were playing with the fashion dolls that were on the market at that particular point in time were developing body image issues and other developmental issues as well because of the dolls that they were playing with. She put us in touch with loads of other experts, from child psychologists to play experts, and we took over 100 points of actionable points that we could build into our doll. We looked in retail, and we found on the retail aisles, on the boys aisle, like the stores are split between boys and girls. Boys, you know, they were subject to toxic masculinity. Everything was about aggression, guns. And on the girls' aisles, it was all stereotypes, very, very limited in play options. And we decided that from the research, we did some desktop research, and we found that 60 years ago, when fashion dolls first came out onto the market, that the average age of the user was 12 years of age, and a 12-year-old aspires to be an adult. In the intervening 60 years, childhood has been compressed that much that the average age now is a 6-year-old, and a 6-year-old aspires to be a 9-year-old. So looking at that single observation, we decided that we would base our character on a 9-year-old child. Everything from how it's sculpted is based on an average child, with the exception of her head. We allowed for hair play. But by basing her on a child, we're able to focus on childhood. We're able to focus on the challenges that kids face, from bullying to obesity to stereotypes to specifically in girls. You'll find on every one of our boxes we have a suffrage medal on there. It's a little subliminal message, but it's something that is quite important to us. We were all about empowerment, not just in the girls section, but we have two boy dolls now as well. So we're also challenging what the options are to boys out there, and we're giving them options. Our clothing, everything that we're doing is focused on enjoying the present, really. It's not about fantasy, it's real. It's doing the activities of what kids actually do. The dolls are a little bit more premium. When we spoke with retailers were saying the dolls had to be 30 centimeters in height, they had to be blister packed, they had to be at a certain price point. But the research that we did was saying, no, actually we want something different. And we decided to ignore what the retailers did, or were asking of us. And that in itself had problems. It created problems because we didn't get the buy-in from the retailers. So I made the decision to sell up my home in London. My business partner at the time, didn't really like that risk. So I decided to buy her out at the time in London. I moved everything back to Ireland. And I got an assistance from Enterprise Ireland. I got a loan from them, and we now employ 16 people up in Donegal. As Anne says, we're now employing 16 people, and we're going from strength to strength. We're in over 36 countries at the moment. But we still need your help as well to get the word out there. We are self-funded, and it does need help from everybody that believes in the brand. In our second year, I came across a video by a little kid called Ali on YouTube. And Ali, since she was 4 years of age, she was bugging her mum that she wanted to make a robot. And her mum wouldn't let her near glue or scissors or anything. She's just too young. But eventually, at 6 years of age, which is still very young, but she allowed her to do it after the consistent annoying of her. But she made a robot out of recycled material, and she entered it into the local Maker Faire competition, which she won first prize. And then she made a video of her, and she was explaining. And I could see in Ali's eyes the passion that she has, but not just the passion that she has for teaching other kids. Ali is all about, she embraces failure as much as, loves the exploring of what's possible. The robot that she made had little pulley systems. For a 6-year-old child, she had little pulley systems so the fingers worked. It was really, really inspirational. And it really, for me, it got me passionately involved in STEM. The second kid that we worked with, which Anne mentioned as well, was a little girl called Abigail. Her mom contacted us because she had looking for exactly what we developed, as in a wholesome doll. And she said that she'd been looking for years, and she eventually found our dolls, and she bought the whole range, and she just wanted to say thank you. So we got in contact, and Abigail developed this doll. We partnered up with the European Space Agency, and we were teaching, inside the box, there's a little leaflet that teaches kids about famous female astronauts and astronomers. So, if you can see it, you can be it. That's what we're trying to do as well, but more so with kids than adults. We partnered up with the European Space Agency, and kind of cheekily we asked them what would be the chances of sending it up to space, and they said we'll look into it. And 6 months later, eventually, they got back to us and said, yeah, it's going up, and went up with Tim Peake up to the space station. And while it was up there, we're teaching them about the different activities, the simple stuff, what they eat, how do they go to sleep, how do they go to the toilet, what are the experiments that they were doing up there on a daily basis. So it was providing content to kids and getting them interested in STEM. Little Hayden down on the bottom. Hayden is actually from Limavady, and he's autistic and he has ADHD. And he was nonverbal prior to Tim Peake taking off to go to space. And his first words were 10, 9, 8, 7. We're working with Hayden on a project now where we want to not just have diverse ethnicities and diverse interests, But we also want to have diverse ability. So last year, we did a project with an organization called Toy Like Me, where we were the first toy company to mass produce a doll with a cochlear implant. It's a wildlife Maya. So wildlife photographer Maya. So the product itself is focused on her interests, and she just happens to have a cochlear implant. We don't say on the box anywhere on the box itself, but there is a leaflet on the inside where after kids purchase it, they find out, oh, what's that? And then we want to normalize different kids with different abilities and make it acceptable in the toy products. And that's what we're trying to do with Hayden as well. We will be doing an autism doll, but it will be about their interests rather than the fact of their ability. And Taylor, you're going to be hearing from Taylor very shortly. Taylor came across the Stargazer doll that we have, and she's amazing. She was one of the youngest kids to go to space camp. She was the only black kid at space camp when she did it, so she's all about representation. When she came home from space camp, she raised over $10,000 to buy books for kids in Jacksonville in her hometown. She then did a fundraiser. She was invited by the Obamas up to the White House to watch a movie called Hidden Figures, where she again was motivated by having watched the Hidden Figures. She went home, raised $20,000. She did another fundraiser with, actually last year she was named by Teen Vogue as 21 of the most influential kids in America under 21 years of age. She met Ava DuVernay when she was at the event, and Ava was telling her about A Wrinkle in Time, which her latest movie, which Ava, if you don't know her, she is the most famous black film director. She is the only one to have had a budget of over $100 million. Motivated Taylor to do another fundraiser, and back in January we were tweeting online and we were talking about, her target. She set herself a target of $15,000, and she was at $6,500, and she wanted to reach halfway point over the weekend, and all of a sudden that night J.J. Abrams gave her $10,000, so she blew her target. The following week she was at she was in LA at the film premiere. And Chris Pine, the actor, walked up to her and says, listen, Ava's been telling me all about you. And I'm totally amazed. He says, what level are you at the moment? She said $25,000. And she said, right, I'll match it. Gave her $25,000. The following week, she was on Oprah. She was on Good Morning America, and Oprah walks on and, again, matches her target. The amazing thing about Taylor is that she gives back to her community. She spends time in schools. She goes. She's interested in getting more kids onto the STEM path, and she's all about representation with girls and people of color as well. One of the most amazing things from what we've been doing to date is the network that these kids have built now amongst themselves. They are all about supporting each other, the different problems, the challenges that they face. They support each other, they encourage each other, they talk about the problems. As Ali, one of the kids, says, kids are not the future, we are here now. We are not going to change the world someday, we are already doing it. Just this year, I got married to a wonderful woman from Colombia, and we have a lovely kid called Henry. I used to be worried about the future, but with these kids, we shouldn't be worried about them. They are absolutely amazing kids. For our part as a business impacts children, so we must let children impact business. That was a quote by the King of Sweden recently. Sir Ken Robinson, I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of his TED Talks. He focuses on this 5 C's of creativity. He was saying that when kids are going to school nowadays, a lot of the jobs that they're studying for, they will no longer exist whenever they leave school. So he says it's really important to focus on creativity and the 5 C's. Collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and compassion. And we see this in abundance with these kids now. They are our role models. For our part, we believe in listening to and empowering all kids. So much so that diverse kids with diverse interests now inspire everything we make. Thank you very much.